Okay. So we're starting chapter 2, Perek Beis of Tehillim, and according to most opinions, Perek Beis of Tehillim is the beginning of Tehillim, and chapter Aleph is just an introduction to the books, to Sefer Tehillim. So that's the one opinion. The other, also quite popular opinion, is that Aleph and Beis 1 and 2 are actually one perek, and Aleph is the first part and Beis is the second part, and it's just been divided for more for convenience than for anything else. And the proof of that would be that, if you wanted a poetic proof of that, Perek Aleph begins with the word Ashrei Ha'ish, fortunate is the man, and Perek Beis rounds it off and ends with Ashrei Kol Chosevai, the same style. Fortunate are all of those who trust in it. So that's the thinking that it's the same, that it's all of the same perek. Perek Aleph is a very upbeat perek, and it starts off as we said, happy is the man, Ashrei Ha'ish, and it seems to be giving the message, which we have discussed before, that if you are you're really fortunate if you're a Jew, you're very fortunate if you follow Torah and mitzvahs, and as long as you do what you're supposed to do, then you'll live a good and happy life. But we all know that that's not necessarily true. So we wonder how Perek Aleph can actually stand on its own, because what happens when we see people who are good, decent, menschlich people, and they do what they're supposed to do, and they don't all have a perfect life, we say, well, what happened? According to Perek Aleph, it was supposed to be an all perfect life. So comes along Perek Beis, either as a response to Perek Aleph or the rest of Perek Aleph, and says to us, no, that was the first part, but let me tell you two things. Firstly, those people who harm you, I guarantee you, I promise you that in the end they will be punished. And that eternal question that we have, how come we see people who are bad prospering and having good lives, but in the end they will pay the consequence for their behavior. And the other big advice that we're going to take from Perek Beis is, don't question Hashem's ways. Doesn't help to question what Hashem is doing, how Hashem is running his world. It doesn't help us. We won't find satisfactory answers, and so we must just plod on. I was actually discussing this with a friend the other day. I think actually, maybe this is a big generalization, but I think men have an easier time not questioning, and females, by our being, okay, we want to know, we're trying to find out. And so often I comment to my husband and I say, what do you think God is doing or thinking or whatever? And he says, I don't think what God is thinking. He's got no problem with it at all. And I think very much that's what Perek Beis is telling us. Don't try to think what God is thinking. Don't try and figure it out. So historically, this perek of Tehillim was written at the time that David HaMelech, right early when he just became king, or soon after he became king, and the Plishtim, the Palestinians, gathered up huge army, thousands of people, and they came to attack him and try and overthrow him. And his response very much is this perek is like, what are you thinking? What are you Plishtim thinking? Hashem made me king, and I'm going to be the king. There's no question at all. The interesting thing of this perek is that it fits perfectly into history, talking about David and the Plishtim, but it also fits into and alludes to the time of Mashiach, when Hashem will be recognized by everyone as great, and the lead up to Mashiach. And it also fits very nicely into the world that we're living in now, and into lots of other different parts of history. And so clearly for us, it's one of those proofs, in case we needed it, that Tehillim is eternal, that it fits every time, every place, every situation. Tehillim was written for us to use. So let's look at this kapitel of Tehillim and try and understand it a bit. So he begins with a question. He says, Lama ragshu goyim uleumim yehegurik. Why do the nations stand up against us? And why do these nations speak empty words? So you see, right from the beginning of time, the Goyim got up and tried to overthrow the Jews. The Goyim didn't like it when we were strong. They still don't like it when we're strong. They will never like it when we're in a place of power. And so forever, Goyim have been standing up and like going for us. And we have in this capital of Tehillim this idea that they actually are afraid of us, and they know that they can't win because Hashem is in charge, and yet they fight us with the understanding that as long as we don't make Hashem happy, they have a chance. And probably the most obvious story that we have of that is with Achashverosh and the Purim story. Achashverosh absolutely knew, as did all the people then, that Hashem had promised that he was going to take the Yidden out of exile after 70 years. Achashverosh knew that his time was over, but he believed that as long as he kept the Jews sinning and kept Hashem cross, that he would be able to be in power. Which makes us stop and think for a minute and say, like, do the Goyim realize the power of our relationship with Hashem more even than we realize it? And this idea of us being on our own with the Goyim uprising against us, this was a message that Yaakov got years and years and years back. When Yaakov fought Esav's angel, so the words in the Torah there say, Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov remained on his own. And immediately, lots of Mefarshim jump in to explain that sentence. So in a very literal way, that sentence simply means that Yaakov's sons and family and things were all on the other side of the river. Vayivater Yaakov levado, and Yaakov remained by himself on this side of the river. But much deeper than that, like understanding it with a little bit more depth, is that Yaakov had to know that forever, whenever we face Esav, and Esav represents all the other nations of the world, we are on our own. We have this illusion, we have this thought that we need the other nations to like us, we need to make treaties, we need to have peace treaties, we worry about who the president of America is, we worry about what the people in every other country think of us. We're always busy with all of that, and it helps us a little bit. It's nice when the nations like us, but we have to know that we are actually on our own. And what turns out for the Jews and how we will be and who will be on our side and what's going to happen, that's all up to Hashem. It's got very little to do with the other nations of the world. And David HaMelech continues, Pasuk Beis, Yisyatzul Malcha Eretz, the kings of the earth stand up, Veriznim Noistu Yachad, and they plot all together al Hashem al Mashiach, against Hashem and his Mashiach. And so this is a continuation of the first pasuk with this little addition, al Hashem va'al Mashiach. They plot against Hashem and his Mashiach. And so we need to understand this double expression, on Hashem and on his Mashiach. And so many times we try and separate Hashem and the Jews. I believe in Hashem, don't like the Jews. I like whatever. You can't, says the Radak. Hashem has told us that Mashiach is going to come. It's one of the principles of belief in Hashem, of the 13 animams, that there is going to be a Mashiach, and that Mashiach is going to come from Beis David, from the house of David. And if you don't believe that, then that is a lack of belief in Hashem, Hashem himself. And so clearly David HaMelech is saying over here, Al Hashem va'al Mashiach. If you try fight me, David HaMelech, then you're actually fighting Hashem. Your faith, and you're fighting Hashem. And so often we do, like, we try and accept that from people. I think one of the big things we hear often is, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm an anti-Zionist. But it's the same thing. If somebody were to tell you, I like you, I don't like your children, or I like whatever, you can't separate between us and Hashem. Hashem in that way. You can't separate between Israel and Jews in that way. You can't separate between the king of the Yidden and the Yidden and Hashem. And that's what David HaMelech is saying over here very, very clearly to the Plishtim. If you fight Hashem, or if you fight me, David HaMelech, both ways you are fighting Hashem. Pasuk Gimel. Nenatka es Moshe Seimai. They try to break their bonds, and they throw off from themselves all their ties. So this pasuk we can understand in a few different levels. The first level we can understand is that the goyim themselves are also created with responsibility in the world. Hashem put them in the world with a purpose of what they also need to be doing in the world. And first level, David HaMelech is saying, they also are trying to throw off their responsibilities. They feel that their responsibilities are too much, and they don't want to be doing what Hashem put them in the world to do. That's level one, the simplest, more literal level of understanding this pasuk. A little bit deeper of understanding it, they are trying to break our bonds with Hashem. They understand, as we said earlier, that the Yidden need to be connected with Hashem in order to be in a strong place. And so, they are trying to break our bond with Hashem. They're trying to break our connections with Hashem, because they understand that if we are not close to Hashem, if we don't have this connection, then they're much safer. They are in a superior place. And you probably all know and realize that interestingly, when we are strong and we connected with Hashem and we do what we're supposed to be doing, we get much more respect from the goyim. They are much they hold us in much more awe when they see us being true to what we believe, true to our principles. I told you last week, but I have no idea when it went frozen. So I just repeat that this woman came to speak at the girls' school, and she told how she stood in front of the Pope, and he put out his hand to shake hands with her, and she said, "I'm sorry, I don't, I'm a religious woman and I don't shake hands with men." And he said, "Like, are you serious? Is that why you won't shake hands with me?" And she said, "Absolutely." And he knelt down in front of her and he said, "I respect you so much for being strong with your principles and your faith." And that's a recent example, but this is true always, that goyim respect us when we stand up for what we believe in much more than when we don't. It's actually written in the Torah that when goyim see us put on tefillin, which I guess that's for men, that it makes them scared. So why does it make them scared? Not because they don't know what this is, that somebody's wrapping around their arms and head, but because they see someone who has the courage of his convictions. He's standing up and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And the third level of understanding this pasuk is that it's talking about us ourselves. We often want to throw off our bonds and our connection to Hashem. Sometimes we feel that Torah and mitzvahs is such a limiting, hard shackles. It's so inconvenient for us, doesn't let us eat what we want, say what we want, go where we want, and we feel frustrated from it, and we try to throw it off. And I shared the story last week, one of my favorite stories, which I've probably shared many times before, about the little dove. And the little dove is running around in Gan Eden and petrified of all the predators, and it's got the cats and the dogs and everybody chasing it, and it turns to Hashem and says, "Help me, I can't run fast enough, and all these things are going to catch me, and they're going to kill me, they're going to eat me." And so Hashem gives the little dove wings, and the little dove bursts into tears and says, "You've made it even worse. Now I've got these two heavy things on me that are just slowing me down." And Hashem says, no, use those wings and then you can fly above all your predators. And so often that's what we do with mitzvahs, right? The mitzvahs can help us to be better, greater, more refined people. And yet our understanding of them as that little dove is that they're holding us down. They're actually allowing us to fly. And in the same idea of us and our Yiddishkeit is that we so often are embarrassed of who we are. And David HaMelech is saying, don't try and throw off your shackles because you're embarrassed of who you are. I think also I said it last week that I took I went with my mother and my son Shmudi right before his bar mitzvah to the Oriental Plaza to buy him a suit, and I was really scared. I didn't want to go there. It was right in the middle of the Intifada. I wasn't sure how welcome we would be there, but Shmudi was this tiny, skinny little thing and could not find a suit for him anyway. So off we went, and I told Shmudi to tuck his tzitzis in and wear a cap. And I thought, we looked so much like everybody else. No one would know we were Jewish. And the first shop we walked into, and I asked, do you have suits for boys? And the man looked at Shmulia and he said, oh, it's your bar mitzvah coming up soon, hey? And realized very quickly that we are obvious to everyone, everywhere. We can't hide the fact that we Jewish. This morning on Howard Feldman's show, so I listened to it in the car on my way to school, and he was asking people to call in and give their unique talents, because apparently today is National Unique Talents Day. So people were calling in and telling their unique talents, and one of the talents was that a man called in and he said he can always tell who is a vendor. He knows, and they don't even have to speak, but he could tell who's a vendor. So Howard Feldman said that isn't unique. We Jews, we can tell who's Jewish. It doesn't matter if we've never met them before. It doesn't matter where we are. We could be on an airplane or in a supermarket or wherever we are, but we can look at someone and we know immediately if the person is Jewish or not. He said that is not a unique talent. That we Jews are obvious wherever we are. And so it's just silly if we decide to try throw off our shackles, so to speak. Because then what does Hashem do? Pasuk Daled, Yoshev b'shamayim yischak. He who sits in heaven laughs. Hashem yilag lamay, and Hashem laughs at this behavior, at these people. So the first reaction of Hashem when he sees people trying not to keep their responsibility, not to do what they're supposed to do, is a laughing. Like, who do you think you are? Like, how do you think this is going to work? But then it moves on. Pasuk Hey, as Yudaber. Then Hashem gets cross and he speaks in anger, and he terrorizes them with his fury. And so this is Hashem moving, so to speak. First, he's really, really patient, and then finally he gets really angry. And the commentaries say he gets angry with them. He also gets angry with Asra. And now the answer, Pasuk Vav, Va'ani nasachti malki al Tzion har kodeshi. I'm the one who anointed my king on Tzion, over Tzion, on my holy place. So this is the first response to the Plishtim. If you're looking at the history, Hashem is saying to all nations, first the Plishtim and then all the others, how do you think you're going to win? I'm the one who made this king. I'm the one who made him David, king of Israel. I'm the one who put the Jews where they are. I'm the one who has made my world go in this way, and you think you can come and fight it and change it. Ani nasachti. I'm the one who appointed him. Another understanding of this, which goes back to our explanation that we're trying to throw off our shackles, so to speak. Say the commentaries that our first reaction, and almost constant reaction, always year after year after year, decade after decade, century after century, is that we blame our leaders for our lack of good behavior. So it's our favorite response to bad behavior. It's not my fault. If I had a good leader, I would be okay. So if our government was better, if our rabbi was better, if our principal was better, it's our leaders. The reason that we just can't exist is because our leaders are bad. Says Hashem, that's not an excuse. Va'anina sachti malki. I'm the one who gave you that leader. I'm the one who put that leader over there. And maybe the leader is not behaving the way that you want the leader to be behaving. Maybe, but you can still behave. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse for you. Not a communal excuse and not an individual excuse. Continues and says, Pasuk Zayin, Asapra el Chayk Hashem Amar Elai Beni Ata Ani Hayem L'Techo. I will tell my decree, says Hashem, and Hashem says to me, Beni, my son, you are my son, and I'm the one who bore you. Just an interesting side point is that this is one of the psukim that the New Testament uses to try and prove that the idea of Yoshka being Hashem's son. That's not what this pasuk means at all. Okay, it doesn't. That's not what it means at all. What does this pasuk actually mean? So, Asapra el Chayk Hashem. I'm gonna tell my secret, says Hashem. And what is his secret? Beniata. You Yidden are like my son. You like my child. Calling somebody my son is like one of the ultimate ways of showing your love. Saying I chose you Yidden as my son, as my children. And calling somebody my son it's a deep love. And why is it such a deep love? Because the bond between a parent and a child, it can't be broken. You can be faribbled, you can, God forbid, go for months or years or whatever without speaking or having anything to do with a parent. People can never ever come to terms with the thing of not connecting with their parent. It's too big, it's too hard. Why? Because the love between a parent and a child is going to be there no matter what, no matter how. And this is what Hashem is saying to us. He says, Beniata, you're my child. Even if you're not behaving, even if I'm annoyed with you, even if you're not doing what I want you to be doing, Beniata, I love you because you are my child. The Dubno Maggid speaks about this declaration of love, and he tells a parable of a king who wants to test the loyalty of his subjects. So he takes them to a far away place from the palace, and he gives them each a map, and he says, I want you to find your way back to the palace. And if you come back to the palace, the rewards are going to be great. But all the way from where he's left them to the palace, there's all kinds of distractions. Some are easy, some are hard, some are fun, some are not such fun. So they're busy following the roadmap, and they get detoured by bad weather, or they get detoured by a beautiful party, or they go swimming at the beach, or they don't feel good for a few days, or whatever it is. And they're all different kinds of detours on the way, and lots of them drop out. And there's only one subject who keeps on. He doesn't get deterred. Every time something comes up, he gathers himself together and he carries on following the map until finally he reaches the palace. And when he comes to the palace, he tells the king, he says, look, here I am. And the king says to him, what gave you the inspiration, the motivation? What let you just keep on and come and get back to the palace? And he says, you know what? It's because I love you. And that is our connection with Hashem. B'niyata. Hashem loves us, we love Hashem, and no matter what else goes on in our lives, we keep on following the roadmap and trying to get back to the palace. And Hashem's response to that is, Sha'al mimeni ve'etna. Ask from me, and I'll give it to you. The nations will be your inheritance, and you will inherit the ends of the earth. And so this, again, all the commentaries comment about these words, Sha'alni menu ve'etna, ask me and I'll give you. That this is what Hashem wants us to do. He wants us to ask him for what we need. And we mustn't be shy. Hashem has plenty and he has so much blessing. And just as a parent wants to give their child everything, so Hashem wants to give us everything. A child is not afraid to ask their parent for what they want, but the benefit we have here with Hashem is that he has everything to give us. A regular parent wants to give, but can't always give their child everything that they want to give. But Hashem has everything, and he says, ask me, daven, pray, tell me whatever it is that you need, and I will give it to you. It's interesting. The commentaries tell us that the connection of Pasuk Vav and Pasuk Zayin and Pasuk Ches is the end of Pasuk Zayin says Hayom Yelidatecha. Today is the day that you were born, so to speak. And then next words after that immediately are Sha'al Mimeni Ve'etena, ask from me and I'll give you. And from here we have the source that on your birthday, you have an extra strong ability to ask for your needs from Hashem with a segura, with the extra opportunity that what we need will be granted. And that's why we have a custom on birthdays to bless and to be blessed, because our muzzle is very strong on the day of a birthday. The next two psukim, Trei'im b'shevet barzel, I'll destroy them with an iron rod, kichli yotzer tenaptem, like a pottery vessel, I will smash them. So Hashem is promising us that all those goyim who try and harm us, all those nations who try and put us down, and again in particular the Plishtim there then, and in particular those nations who will try and get us right before Mashiach comes, Hashem promises that he will destroy them with an iron rod and smash them to smithereens, like a pottery, like a piece of pottery. It's interesting that the word barzel, well, let me go back a drop. It's interesting that the goyim are going to be punished very harshly. What is it that's going to bring Mashiach and end the harshness of the goyim over us? It says b'shevet barzel, an iron rod. And our commentaries tell us that the word barzel is actually an acronym. The four letters, the Beis for Bilhah, the Resh for Rachel, the Zayin for Zilpah, and the Lamed for Leah. So this word barzel, iron, when are we a strong nation, as strong as an iron rod? When all the children of Bilhah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Leah are united, then we are not standing there on our own, but we are barzel, we are as strong as iron. Continues Pasuk Yud, V'atam alachem hiskilu hivasru shofte aretz, and now kings be wise. Okay, earthly people realize that Hashem is going to take care of the Jews. He ends, Ivdes Hashem b'yirah, serve Hashem with fear, v'gilu bir'ada, and rejoice with trembling. So what is this idea of Ivdet Hashem b'yirah, serve Hashem with fear? So at a very simple, like almost pshat level, lower level, we know that there's three levels of service of Hashem. The bottom level, so to speak, is fear, that you listen to Hashem because you're afraid of punishment. And then we move up where we serve Hashem out of love and out of awe. So that would be like one understanding of Ivdet Hashem b'yirah, to fear Hashem with to serve Hashem with fear. But what is this concept of gilu bir'ada, rejoice with trembling? And our commentaries tell us that when we are in a place of rejoicing, we have to be able to stop and realize that the reason we are rejoicing is because Hashem has given all of this to us. And therefore there has to be some level of fear in it, not just loose rejoicing. The Gemara tells that Ravina, the son of Ravina, had made a wedding, and at the wedding he took notice that all the people, even the important people, were much too merry. They had like let go of all, and they were just enjoying probably the bar. And he got really upset about it, and he took an expensive vase, it says it was worth 400 zuzim, and he smashed it. And all of a sudden, everybody they heard the glass crack, crushing, and they all sobered up. They all realized that merriment without any boundaries is not okay, and they carried on being happy, but they said Gilu bir ada, even when you're really happy, there has to be a level of trembling. Actually, the Tosfos says that this is where the custom of breaking a glass at a wedding comes from, that from Ravino's son's wedding, that at the time where you are absolutely happy, you have to stop for a second and put boundaries, put something in place that reminds you that everything comes from Hashem, and that we mustn't just be loosely happy without any boundaries. The commentaries also tell us that whenever we're doing something, even we're doing something new, it should be with a little bit of trembling. Gilu, we should rejoice, but it should be birada with a little bit of trembling, which reminds me when I started teaching, and I suddenly, I was all ready to start my first year of teaching, and it was the summer in America, and I set up my classroom and I was ready to teach these grade ones, and all of a sudden I freaked out. And I spoke to Rabbi Grona about it, and I said, I'm petrified. I don't know what I just was thinking, taking on to teach grade ones. What happens at the end of this year if they can't read? What's going to be? Was I crazy? And Rabbi Grona told me then, he said, it's good that you're scared, and you must always be scared. And the year that you go back to school and you're not scared, that's when you mustn't teach anymore. And it's a strong thing. We all have to know that when we have responsibility, Gilu birada, we should rejoice, but there should be an element of fear in it, of the fear of the responsibility that we've taken on ourselves. The last explanation for this concept of Gilu birada I heard from one of my teachers. She said the word Gilu, which we've translated over here as rejoice, also Gilu also means reveal. And he says, she said, when is the greatest rejoicing? When Hashem is revealed, when we understand what's going on, when we see godliness in around us, that should be our greatest rejoicing. But when we see godliness, then we have awe, right? So Gilu birada, we should rejoice because we're seeing the revelation of Hashem, and we are in awe of it as a result. The final pasuk, Nashku bar penny enough. Serve Hashem with a pure heart, so you shouldn't become angry. And you shouldn't abandon us because he can get cross in an instant. And then finishes, Ashrei kol chesed bo, fortunate are all those who trust in Hashem. So this idea of nashku bar, that we have to yearn for purity. A person has to know that however great we are, we can always be greater, and that actually that greatness is the desire to be greater and working on ourselves to be greater. And that's the concept of nashku bar. Always look to be greater, to connect with Hashem more. This concept of nashku, nashku bar, nashku also from the word nashika, a kiss, and bar is actually translates as son. You probably know Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What does it mean, nashku bar? Kiss sons. So say the commentaries, the idea of kissing is loving, and bar, the sons of Hashem, as he said earlier on in this parak. One of the ways that we connect greatest with Hashem and that our service becomes greater and greater is if we're looking at other Yidden, at other people, and we are only wanting to love them. Ahavas Yisrael. When a person has Ahavas Yisrael with sincerity, that is called nashku bar. That's what will bring Mashiach in the end. And that's how he finishes by saying, Ashrei kol chesed bo. Fortunate are all those who trust in Hashem, who want to connect with Hashem, who believe in Hashem, and they are will be rewarded. And there's nothing more comforting than believing in Hashem, than trusting in Hashem, and that's something that we have to do for ourselves. And I think that's where we go up to today, and I wish you all a good Shabbos and should have a good holiday. And please God, we will resume Tehillim Shiurim in January. I think so.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Rifki.
much, Rifki. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Have a good rest. And
Thank
Chodesh
you.
Right?
Thank you. It should be a good month for everybody as well. And
Amen.
uh,
Thank you.